Hey guys, welcome to the Ramsey Paul Show. I do this show every day and we go over the top 5 news stories of the day, or at least the top 5 stories I'm interested in. Some of them aren't as serious, but we have a lot of fun. So thank you for being here. If you like this program, be sure to like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. So let's go ahead and jump into the stories. The number one story is Bed Bath and Beyond is leaving California. And another stunning embarrassment for Gavin Newsom. Well, some people are really pro Gavin Newsom, and we'll get to the next story coming up. But I know Nick Fuentes, he loves Gavin Newsom. I can't link the link because I can't show it now because it has some music in the background. But Nick finds Gavin to be tall and just handsome, very dreamy, even though Gavin is for open borders. So I guess some people love Gavin. But in general, Gavin's a disaster. And Bed Bath & Beyond, they have announced that they will not open any retail stores in California. We're taking a stand because it's time for common sense. The reasoning: high taxes, high fees, forced unsustainable wages. California has created one of the most overregulated, expensive, and risky environments for a business in America. This is why businesses are fleeing California. So the idea that Gavin Newsom is going to be a strong candidate for the Democrats is just crazy. We have stores in almost every other state. And so this is a huge blow for Gavin Newsom and his presidential aspirations. California is a mess. And part of the reason California is a mess is because of the Democrats and Gavin Newsom. They're very hostile towards business. They have a lot of regulation, very high taxes. They're very anti-white. They're very pro-crime. And that just doesn't fly. And I say pro-crime because they were behind all these measures after George Floyd. Hey, if you're black and you steal, we're not going to arrest you. And it's made a lot of cities almost unlivable. Like in San Francisco, people put signs on their car. Please don't break into my car to steal whatever you want. I don't have anything in the car, but don't break my window. Because the crime is so bad that the thieves, they just break the window. The police aren't going to show up. And so they don't even make a police report. So it shows crime going down. But it's so bad, it's just no one's reporting the crime. And the homeless problem is out of control under Gavin Newsom. So this is another nail in the coffin, I believe, with Gavin Newsom. We will see about that. All right. I guess I'm going to change this up a little bit. I was doing that as my number. I was going to put this as my number 3 story, but I'll do this as number 2 because I mentioned Nick Fuentes. And Nick is really in love with Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is a leftist governor of California. And Nick retweeted this showing JD Vance, who Nick hates because JD Vance has an Indian wife, and he was showing Gavin Newsom, who has like this Aryan family. And so this is a new directive. I don't know if it's Nick himself or his handlers, but they understand JD Vance is probably going to be the nominee in 2028. So they want to try to derail that. And they want to hype up Gavin Newsom, even though Gavin Newsom is extremely anti-white, open border, pro-DEI, pro-reparations, everything horrible, pro-LGBTQ. I guess I can understand why Nick is for that. But otherwise, if you're supposedly on the right, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. And Nick has done this previously. If you remember in the election, he told his followers to go to Michigan to tell the Muslims there not to vote for Trump. And the idea was to throw Michigan to Kamala Harris so Kamala would be president. Well, what would have happened if Kamala Harris would have been president? Well, we wouldn't have a closed border. It'd be an open border still. We wouldn't have elimination of DEI on the federal level. It would be enhanced, and you'd probably have more censorship and everything. And this is a black woman, right? So this is who Nick was helping to try to get into the White House. Thankfully, it failed. Now they're doing the same operation against JD Vance and for Gavin Newsom because JD Vance, people are thinking, will be Trump's heir. He will be the presumptive nominee. It's still early. We don't know. So Nick is like, oh, how can you vote for JD Vance? He's got a Indian wife. And I'm like, okay, Nick, you literally supported a black rapper for president. Literally, a black rapper who showed up with a gimp mask praising a man who lived in Germany 70 years ago. Okay, can we have an optics check? So I don't really quite understand this. All of a sudden, there's this racial purity. And again, when Nick was arrested in Chicago and the police said, aren't you that white supremacist? No, I'm not even white. I'm Mexican. And I mean, come on. I mean, couldn't you just say, hey, I'm not a white supremacist, but I am white. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's like, no, I'm not white. I'm a Mexican. It's just so weird. How can you attack JD Vance for having an Indian wife when you yourself call yourself Mexican, not wife, and you campaign? In fact, wasn't he the communication director for Kanye, right? Yay, for being president, a black rapper who Kanye later, when he got on his meds, he attacked the Catholic Church and attacked white people. Yeah, this is just bizarre. And then I won't link to it, but JD Vance, he saw was showing a clip of Gavin Newsom. And he goes, oh, how can you not support Gavin? Look how tall he is. Look how handsome he is. What straight man says that? But I don't know. So you don't understand how he's trolling. Yeah, I don't know. What is this? Like, I swear, you could be caught like having sex with a black guy in a bathroom. Oh, I was just trolling, man. You don't understand the troll. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds kind of strange to me. So this is kind of the two stories. Gavin Newsom is really attacking Trump. California, they're going to do the redistricting to try to get more Democrats in. And again, Gavin Newsom is extremely anti-white, pro-open border, the whole bit, right? And but we got to support Gavin over JD Vance because JD Vance has an Indian wife, and that's off limits. But voting for a black rapper, that's okay. I don't get it, but that's where that is there. So that's the number two story. Nick is officially on the Newsom bandwagon, attacking JD Vance, which I don't think really JD Vance really minds. I think he's probably happy about that. So that was the number two story. All right, the number three story, and this just broke before I got on the air. And let's take a look at this. This has to do with Trump. I swear, Trump is magical. He gets out of everything. And here we go.
President, there's a Fox News alert here. An appeals court has just thrown out President Donald Trump's $364 million civil fraud penalty. This just happened. It is a developing story. We're getting a lot more information, a big news story for the day. We're going to bring you more details as we get them. This just in.
That is a big story, and I'll give you more details. This is the case of the civil lawsuit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. She's that DEI hire in New York who is extremely anti-white, anti-Christian. She's the one that did lawfare to put VDARE out of business because she didn't like their political point of views. And she worked to try to put Donald Trump in jail because she didn't like his views. And already there's a Department of Justice investigation investigating Letitia James for engaging in civil rights violations, abusing her power as Attorney General to going after someone, in this case, Donald Trump, because she didn't like his point of views. Anyway, what it was, this was against Donald Trump and his sons, Eric and Donald Trump Jr., in saying that the Trump organization engaged in financial fraud by inflating property values and his net worth on financial statements. And this is his property in Florida. It was nonsense, and it was clearly politically driven. And again, you have a court, any case against Donald Trump in New York, they're going to find against him. But the appeal court, they said this case was nonsense. They threw it out. So this is another example. Trump, he's like 9 lives. The guy's amazing. Remember all those legal problems he had right before his election, and one after another he won. The guy, I have my issues with Trump, but it's pretty amazing. So Trump has won the lawsuit the lawsuit was thrown out, or at least he had that lawsuit against him thrown out. So good things keep happening with Trump on that. So that's the number 3 story. And let's see here. Let's do the number 4 story. This is Tina Peters. And speaking of Trump, Trump is working to get Tina Peters out of prison. And free Tina Peters, a brave and innocent patriot who's been tortured by crooked Colorado politicians, including the big mail-in ballot supporting governor. Yeah, the governor of Colorado is quite interesting. Let's just put it that way. And what happened is Tina Peters, she's the one that was a whistleblower saying that the Democrats were engaging in fraud during the 2020 election. And she brought up problems with that, and she gave access to people look at the machines, the voting machines, and they threw her in jail for that. And it's a state crime, not federal, so Trump can't pardon her. But it is interesting Trump is coming to her bat, because there are looking now that in the 2020 elections, there were very strange things that went on. Let's just say that. And at the time, it was verboten to talk about it, but now Trump is president. There's this idea we need to pardon these people that were whistleblowers that exposed the fraud. So I hope Tina gets released. She's 69 years old. Yeah. Now, if she'd been like a young black guy mugging someone in Colorado, she wouldn't go to jail. But because she was a whistleblower, an older white woman, Colorado, no, we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to put her in jail. So that's the number 4 story. All right. And then we'll get to the number 5 story is some JD Vance again, talking about Trump's leadership style and other things. So let's just take a look at this here. I thought this was pretty interesting.
So we're actually in the east. It was like 1 a.m. Moscow time, and they had no anticipation. So we're actually in the east wing of the White House, and the president says, we've had a pretty good meeting. I'm going to go call Vladimir Putin and see what he says about it. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to call him next week? And he's like, no, what time is it in Moscow? Let's call him right now. And I think one of the things I've realized about President Trump's leadership is he cuts through the BS of some of these diplomatic protocols and just says, I'm going to get things done. If I want to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to somebody. You had a lot of the Europeans who were saying, no, there needs to be proper, vetting, and the teams have to prepare the phone call and blah, 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 blah. And the president was like, no. I want to talk to the guy. I'm going to talk to the guy. And I think that kind of no holds barred, no BS diplomacy is part of the reason why we've made the progress we have. And we've made a lot of progress, Laura. Look, who knows what's going to happen? The president tells me this all the time. You can never say with certainty what the outcome in this situation is going to be. But we now have the Russians talking to the Ukrainians. They're talking details about what would be necessary on each side to stop the fighting and stop the killing. We've made more progress in 3 months than the country had made in 3 years in stopping this conflict. And I think it's because sometimes you just need a president who will pick up the phone and call somebody.
That's a good style, by the way, of Trump. That's his leadership style. He doesn't delay things. He's like, hey, well, we're talking here. We have a question for Putin. I'm just going to call him right now. It's like 1 a.m. in the morning, Moscow time, but Putin took his call. And as I've said before repeatedly concerning Ukraine and Russia, I'm skeptical a deal can be reached anytime soon. They seem too far apart. But I will give Trump credit in that Trump has a vision. When Trump has a vision, he doesn't really allow the obstacles to hold him back. He just goes full force towards that vision. It's not always successful, and I doubt he'll be successful here for reasons I talked about previously. But I do admire how Trump will get involved directly like that without all the bureaucratic bullshit. Another thing that's interesting, JD Vance is one of the most active vice presidents I have seen in my lifetime. And I know I have a foreign audience, but traditionally a vice president doesn't really do much. They don't really have much to do in the Constitution, except for, break the tie in the Senate vote. Otherwise, they don't really have any authority. And wait around for the president to die. That's about it. But JD Vance has been actively involved with the Trump administration, including with these negotiations with the Zelensky and Putin, especially Zelensky. He's in the meetings. He's speaking to the press frequently. And I think JD Vance is pretty articulate. And the whole JD Vance thing, getting back, well, how can you support JD Vance because he has an Indian wife? And I'm like, yeah, I guess if you're like a total 100% racial purist, that will be a no-go for you. But again, the people that are attacking JD Vance, many of them are not even white, and they actually supported like a black guy. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I don't really understand this double standard here. I don't hold the standard. I think JD Vance, he started out as a neocon, and he has definitely moved in our direction. I personally like JD Vance, despite where he came from, and I think he's very articulate. So we will see. And JD Vance also then talked a little bit about how President Trump has been very successful reducing a lot of the crime that we see now in Washington, D.C. And let's just take a look at this here, because President Trump, he brought in the National Guard to deal with all the violence and carjackings and everything else that was going on in D.C.
Just the past 9 days, we've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects because these guys are busting their ass. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person, obviously pass out a few burgers, but most of all, just an message to the American people. Look, we don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and by disorder and by chaos. You can actually do stuff. You can actually bring law and order to communities. You just got to have the political willpower to do it.
And I think, again, this is very unusual for a vice president to take the lead in something like this, but JD Vance is, and he's right. And this is good to see. So often we've been focused on the other countries, and it's like, oh, we just got to tolerate a lot of crime because Black Lives Matter. We don't want to put black bodies in jail. And, oh, we got to tolerate insane drug addicts, hobos yelling at us because, oh, the free speech. And it's like, no, we have vagrancy laws. We don't have to tolerate these people on the streets, and we don't have to tolerate violent criminals. And I think this is something that, despite leftist protesters that are mostly white, people that actually live in the community, they're very happy about it because they don't like the crime. Most people do not like crime in their community, no matter what race is committing it. And here's a black guy talking about this.
What's up, y'all? I'm walking to work this morning. I'm downtown, walking from the Union Station to my job, Department of Justice, and I see something beautiful this morning, y'all. Look behind me. See the National Guards? It's a black dude. A couple of National Guards trucks. There's another one back there. Both brothers, man. National Guards. Stand up for the country. You know what I mean? In D.C. Love it, man. People, the media trying to make you feel like the people in D.C., like, they're trying so hard to make it a race thing. Let me tell you something. The Washington, D.C. citizens, they are so excited. This city been invested with crime for so long, man, to be the greatest country in the world, its capital city, to be as bad as it is when it comes to crime. It's awful. I work downtown. I go to CVS to buy like headphones. Everything's locked up because you're allowed to steal. The kids are going nuts. You get on the train, they're acting up. But now you got the National Guards, man.
So I'm not going to go through the whole video, but this just shows people want law and order. And a part of the problem with Washington, D.C., and this happened in a lot of cities like Berkeley and San Francisco, where they decided in Minneapolis that, oh, because of George Floyd, if people are black, we can't arrest them when they commit crimes. So crime has gone through the roof. Stores have to lock everything up. There's violence that happens and nothing happens with the criminals, and people get tired of it. So by Trump putting these troops on the streets, it is really helping with the crime in these areas. Because now, this is a demographic problem. As I said, often where I live, there's basically no diversity and there's basically no police, but people don't act in that way. There's differences in people. Let's just say that there are. It's real. But if you get in a place like Washington, D.C., you need a heavy police presence or National Guard to keep people online. It's just the way it is. And if you ease that up, you're going to have robberies, carjacking, thefts. Now, where I live, there's hardly any police presence and people act responsibly. As again, people aren't exactly the same. So I support Trump for doing this. And again, a lot of the people that live in Washington, D.C., they don't want to experience carjackings and all this mayhem going on. And they're happy with this. Now, leftist white liberals that don't even live in this city, they will go out and protest because, oh, they have a right to commit crimes and everything. But again, most people do not support criminals running the streets. It's not a popular position. And that's why someone like Gavin Newsom is going to have a very difficult time, I think, in 2028, because the policies of let's have an open border, let's discriminate against white people with DEI, let's allow criminals, especially if they're black, to run free without consequences. Those positions are no longer popular. If they ever were popular, I don't know, but they're definitely not popular now. All right, so our top 5 stories, let me go through it. Number 1, Bed Bath & Beyond leaving California. Again, if you guys don't know, if you're out of the country, they're a big chain. I don't go there. I guess they have like bathroom products or whatever, towels, bedding, stuff like that, scented candles. And they're leaving California just because of the regulation and taxes. California is not a business-friendly state anymore. Ironic, because from the 1950s through the 80s, it was the Golden State. It's where everyone wanted to go for business. But it shows you how government policies do make a difference. All right, the number 2 story is Fuentes has, over the past of the couple of days, continued his attacks on JD Vance. Like, how can you vote for JD Vance? He has an Indian wife. I'm supporting the tall and handsome and the dreamy Gavin Newsom, even though Gavin Newsom is extremely anti-white, open borders, DEI, all that. I think that kind of shows where that is. And I think it's done deliberately. Again, it reminded me of the elections when they were trying to throw Michigan for Kamala. Number 3, the appeals court threw out the $364 million judgment against Trump. And again, this was brought by the corrupt New York Attorney General, Letitia James. And now she's being investigated for multiple things. I think she allegedly committed mortgage fraud herself. So she's got some of that investigation. And I think there's the federal government's investigating her for violating people's civil rights, meaning she's attacked people, not because they've committed crimes, but because she didn't like their politics, like she did with VDARE. Number 4 story, top story is Trump demanded that Tina Peters be released. Tina Peters, she was a Mesa County clerk and recorder, and she was sentenced to 9 years in prison for her role in showing what she considered tampering with the voting machines. And that was considered insurrection to show that, be a whistleblower. And number 5, JD Vance was talking about Donald Trump's leadership style, how he will call Putin directly. And he also talked about how Trump's policies in Washington, D.C. have dramatically reduced violent crime on the street. So those are the top 5 stories for today. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.